Hey everyone, what's good and welcome back. Today we're going to be talking about the 1991 album The Low End Theory by A Tribe Called Quest. This is the first in another segment I'm doing in which I listen to albums that themselves may not be new but are new to me, and I'm going to be calling it Monday's Music Journey, or MMJ for short. Starting off with the Low End Theory because, of course, throughout the years, I've heard of it several times and knew it was a pretty acclaimed hip-hop album, but just never checked it out myself. It wasn't until a friend told me to check it out themselves where I decided to give it a shot. And I also thought, why not just talk about it on the channel as well? So that's exactly what we're gonna do. So with that out of the way, let's just get into it.
Back in the days when I was a teenager, before I had status and before I had a pager.
That bass line is so thick and catchy, I absolutely love it. Especially paired with those banging drums which perfectly prop up Q-Tip's opening verse. On the opening verse, Q-Tip speaks on his younger years and relationship with hip-hop, and how he grew up with it, and where he was at that point in time with hip-hop. I love his smooth and subdued delivery as he gives his verses. Paired with the skeletal beat, it creates a kind of dark and mysterious sound to the track. I also love how on the chorus, the subtle sound, what I believe is a saxophone, comes in. It may not sound like it, but to me, they add a lot to the overall song and really elevate it for me personally. A second Q-Tip verse follows the chorus that is equally as smooth and well done, so I enjoy it just as much as the first one. Then that chorus with that lovely sax comes back in, which acts as a great closer for the song. Overall, it's a pretty good song and a good opener as it sets up where A Tribe Called Quest is in their lives regarding hip-hop. The song is a 10 out of 10 to me personally. Another catchy bass line to kick the song off with some snappy drums as Phife Dawg comes in to give the opening verse. I really like how energetic Phife sounds on this opening verse. It's a good jolt after the previous song, which was relatively low-key. Q-Tip then comes in with his verse, which is equally as solid as Phife's in my eyes. The chorus then comes in with the repetition of the title and has this cool, dark, airy sound come into the instrumental. It feels like it's hiding and creeping behind the instrumental and adds a nice little somber feeling to it in a way. Phife's next verse is talking about how he feels tension in certain situations and how the way other people behave can affect his behavior as well. Q-Tip then drops another quality verse, only for the chorus I enjoy so much to appear before the song ends. Overall, it's a pretty good song. I don't think it's the craziest song ever, but it's pretty good to me nonetheless. It's an 8 out of 10 to me personally.
To the effect of nothing, effective fronting is what I don't allow, so let me tell you something.
That lick at the beginning is really compelling, and I love that it's present throughout the rest of the instrumental. Q-Tip then comes in talking about dealing with promoters for shows. It's a pretty decent verse, and I like his performance overall. Much like the first verse, the second verse follows topical suit and is of the same level as quality as well. Overall, it's a pretty straightforward song that I think is decent, but nothing amazing to me personally, so this one is a 7 out of 10 to me. I love those swirling piano keys mixed with the bass and steady drums. It creates this dark and demented feeling instrumental wise. Phife Dawg kicks off the song talking about his past regarding relationships with women and meeting one who he calls his match, but is really somebody who plays him as he played other girls before. It's interesting to me how he uses the word match, which could be a double entendre for a formidable opponent or a good partner. It's a compelling verse that Phife gives that leads into the chorus where things lighten up instrumentally with what sounds like a saxophone. Phife then follows topical suit on the second verse as he begins talking about women once again, this time more in a bit of a derogatory sense however, but it's a product of its time, so I'm not going to spend too much time talking about the lyrical content itself, but it sounds decent regardless. Overall, this is a pretty good song. I like a good bit. I really like the instrumental, and the verses themselves are pretty good. The song is an 8.5 out of 10 to me.
Once had a fetish for some booty.
I really like the smooth drum beat and bass line mixed with those guitar licks. It creates a really relaxed atmosphere for the rest of the song. Q-Tip's first verse is pretty good and lyrically sees him talking about his craft once again. I personally, however, am unfortunately not a huge fan of the flow. It seems to be a little choppy to me personally, which I understand was probably the point, but it just doesn't click with me personally. The chorus is pretty, however, with backing vocals from Vinaya Mojica. Q-Tip's second verse does follow the same topic and quality as the previous verse, just like songs that come before it. Overall, it's a decent and pleasant sounding song, but once again, I'm just not wowed by it personally. This song is a 6.5 out of 10 to me. I really like those hard drums and funky bassline that create the backdrop for Q-Tip's first verse. His first verse, which seems to be setting up a cautionary tale about the music industry. I love how the instrumental goes through these record scratches and horns before the chorus kicks in, which brings these pretty reverb sounding synths as Q-Tip, Phife Dawg, and Lord Jamar do the chorus. Q-Tip's second verse brings in these funky guitar licks as he continues on with his frustrations about the music industry before Lord Jamar comes in with his verse and laments about the same pitfalls of the industry. Phife's verse starts off with "Aw shucks," which, not gonna lie, is a little funny because no way would a verse start off like that today. Both he as well as Set.X and Diamond D follow suit in their verses, although Diamond D's stands out to me the most due to his catchy flow. Overall, it's a good song and I like the narrative of it as well as the energetic beat. This one is an 8.5 out of 10 to me personally.
Let me flaunt the style. I think that the time's near that we drop studs. There won't be no duds here.
The instrumental is pretty with those snappy drums and smooth keys that come in and out. Q-Tip once again has a good first verse and second verse over top of it, followed by Phife Dawg, who also has a good verse. Also, that guitar that comes in after Phife's verse for the interlude is so pleasant sounding, so I really like it. Overall, this is a pretty straightforward and super laid back and relaxed song as the title would suggest, and it just sounds pretty pleasant to me. This one is an 8 out of 10.
I don't wanna owe you that much that I would go for the unforbidden touch.
This is such a compelling instrumental to me, with its drums, bass, and subdued keys in the background. Q-Tip and Phife trade verses about women once again, this time in a more positive light it seems, as Q-Tip advises listeners to listen when a girl says no, which honestly, for the time, is really progressive. It's a pretty commendable concept paired with a pretty high quality instrumental that I enjoy a good bit. So with all that, this song is a 9 out of 10 to me personally. Instrumentally, I love the drum beat and those horns that seem to almost float over top of the other instrumentation. It's pretty cool. When the bass kicks in though, wow, this beat goes hard. I just wish it kept that same energy throughout the rest of the instrumental, however. The instrumental on the verses unfortunately doesn't live up to what came before in my opinion, but it's not bad by any means, and at least the part I do like returns for the chorus and outro. Q-Tip's and Phife Dawg's verses are decent to me, however, at this point in time, I'm not personally wowed by them. Overall, it's a decent song with aspects I really do like, and some I find to just be decent. This one is a 7 out of 10 to me.
Look at Miss Elaine, who runs the fast lane, barely knows her name, struck by her fame.
If I'm being honest, I personally don't find the sample in the chorus to be very pleasing to me. It just doesn't click, but I suppose I could see how it would for someone else. The drum beat and looping sample in the instrumental afterwards are really well done to me, however. Q-Tip takes over this song with well done verses about a well-off woman he is trying to get with, which sounds good over top of the instrumental. Overall, once again, it's a pretty decent song to me that has good aspects and some I'm just personally not a huge fan of, so it's a 7.5 out of 10 to me personally. I really like the instrumental with these ghostly synths that appear here and there over top the drums, which creates a pretty smooth sound. That saxophone on the chorus, however, is so classy and I love how it's integrated into the instrumental. Q-Tip and Phife Dawg do well over top of this instrumental and sound right at home. Overall, it's just a really good sounding song. Not much more to say other than that, in all honesty. This one is an 8.5 out of 10 to me personally.
Skypagers on all the time.
Those drums go hard, especially paired with that bass line in the instrumental. Q-Tip and Phife Dawg go back and forth talking about the importance of a Skypager back in the early 90s and they're going equally as hard as the instrumental to me. I love that horn that comes in during the bridge as well. It's a small detail, but adds a lot to the overall song to me personally. It's a straightforward song that goes pretty hard in all honesty, so I like it a good bit. This one is a 9 out of 10 to me.
What is a party if it doesn't really rock? What is a poet, all balls, no cock?
There's a plucky little guitar lick in the instrumental, but what I really love are the drums with those rim shots and the 808 as well. It just goes hard to me. Q-Tip's verse goes hard too with his flow and the way he asks what at the beginning of every line, as well as the rhyme scheme. This is probably my favorite Q-Tip performance on the entire album in all honesty, and it's just a plus that it's over top a well done beat. Overall, it's a pretty good song that I like a good bit, so this one is also a 9 out of 10 to me. That chorus goes so hard with all the vocals mixed together, along with those heavy drums and thick bass line. Those keys in the background also add a bit of a melancholic feel, which is a nice contrast from the grittiness of all the other instrumentation. Five Dog kicks the song off and goes just as hard as the instrumental honestly, and I especially like that line where he says, "Bust a nut inside your eye to show you where I come from." It's just a funny line to me. Charlie Brown and Dinso D, if I'm pronouncing that right, also go hard on their verses as well, which is appealing to hear. But Dinso D really goes the hardest out of the two in all honesty, especially with his flow. Q-Tip's verse goes so hard as well with his flow, much like Dinso D. Busta Rhymes then ends the song with an eccentric verse as he flexes his range and delivery, which is quite the welcome change of pace in all honesty. Overall, this is a really good song and a pretty hard-hitting closer, which I can appreciate. This one is a 10 out of 10 to me. I have no complaints here. The Low End Theory by A Tribe Called Quest is 14 tracks and just under 50 minutes long, which, as I've said before, hits the sweet spot in terms of album length for me, which is between 45 to 50 minutes. The sequencing of this album is pretty well done because I think Excursions is an amazing opener and Scenario is a perfect closer. In a way, some of the songs in the middle could be interchanged, but the way they're sequenced is good to me regardless. The overall theme and narrative seems to vary song to song, but what they have in common is that they seem to be things that Q-Tip and Phife Dawg have to deal with daily in their lives as rappers, which is interesting to hear about and well executed for the most part to me. For the album length, sequencing, and overall narrative, I believe that an 8.5 is appropriate for everything surrounding the actual music on the album. So if you add that 8.5 along with all the ratings I gave the songs on this album, you get an 8.3 out of 10 overall, which I believe is fair. However, I would not be surprised if it went up as time went on, in all honesty. I understand many people would probably rate this album higher, but I have only recently heard this for the first time. But even then, I can still recognize that it's really well done and can understand why it's so acclaimed. There is not a single bad song in here, in all honesty. My favorite songs had to be Excursion, Scenario, Skypager, Infamous Date Rape, Butter, and Show Business. My least favorites were Verses from the Abstract and Rap Promoter. Although again, those are not bad songs, they just personally didn't click with me like other songs did on the album. This is the first album from A Tribe Called Quest I have gone through in depth, and most likely won't be the last, since I did enjoy this a good bit. As time goes on, I'll most likely talk about the rest of their catalog, and I can't wait to do so. So yeah, that's it. Thanks for watching everybody, and I'll see y'all next time.